Last night's matchup was a heavyweight scrap, the kind of game where every possession mattered, and every late rotation felt like a potential momentum shift. No fluff. This is a raw breakdown of what happened, why it mattered, and what it tells us about this team's identity right now. First up, the guy who grabbed the game by the throat and refused to let go. He was everywhere, not just scoring in bursts, but setting the tone with reads and making plays that forced the opponent to constantly adjust. He sits in that rare tier where scoring and playmaking blend so seamlessly, opponents can't pick one way to guard him. The stat line was enormous. Points, assists, rebounds, steals. But the reason it mattered wasn't the accumulation of numbers. It was how his presence altered spacing, rotation priorities, and decision making across both rosters. On offense, he orchestrated tempo like a conductor calling tempo changes. He probed the defense with a slow, patient dribble, baiting defenders to inch up or rotate. When help arrived, he punished the rotation with a variety of counters. Step backs when defenders overcommit, quick drives when space opened, and precision kickouts to shooters when rotations left shooters momentarily alone. That probing approach forced the defense to choose, lay off and concede looks, or close out aggressively and risk getting beat. Both choices were exploitable on different possessions. Defensively, he was opportunistic. He read passes, picked pockets, and converted stops into immediate transition opportunities. When a player can flip a whole possession from defense to offense in a heartbeat, it provides an enormous advantage. That happened multiple times. A steal turning into a quick break layup, a deflection leading to a late clock look. Those possessions didn't just add to the box score, they changed the feel of the game and kept the opposing team on its heels. A handful of sequences highlight his dominance. In one sequence, he uses a well-timed screen to create space, pulls into a step back triple, and nails it with the defender frozen in the air. That bucket kickstarts a momentum swing. On the next defensive trip, he anticipates a skip pass, steps into the passing lane, and races the other way to hit a cutter for an easy finish, scoring on one end and catalyzing a defensive stop into points on the next. That kind of two-way impact turns the tide. Another play was textbook craft. The defense sent a blitz. Instead of forcing it, he absorbed contact, lowered his shoulder, and dropped into a post position to draw help. While everyone expected a kick out, he threaded a behind-the-back no-look pass that found an open shooter. That wasn't flash for flash's sake, it was spatial awareness and calm under pressure. This is how you punish an over-aggressive defense, with patience and surgical passing rather than hero ball shots. And then there was the pick and roll with the big that looked unstoppable. The ball handler hit the screen, the roll was timed perfectly, and instead of forcing a contested finish, the passer delayed just long enough for the roller to build momentum. When the final pass came, the big man had position and finished strong at the rim. That sync between passer and roller, the milliseconds of timing and the mutual trust, is practice and chemistry made visible. Those are the possessions that turn tight games into wins. Speaking of the big man, he quietly put together one of the more efficient nights you'll see. It wasn't just raw numbers, though they were impressive. It was the decisiveness, no second guessing. Post-ups were direct, defensive rotations were sharp, offensive rebounds were seized when they mattered most. He set hard screens, sealed defenders, and then punished them when they gambled on the perimeter. His impact came from controlling space more than from athleticism. Against a long, mobile challenger, he didn't try to out-jump or outrun. He used leverage, timing, and positioning. On lobs, he timed the leap perfectly. On possessions where the defense tried to trap the ball handler and deny the entry, he popped to the right spot, caught lobs cleanly, and finished with power. On defense, he showed awareness, sliding to protect the paint while contesting outside shots when necessary. That dual responsibility, rim intimidation plus perimeter accountability, is a rare and valuable combination. One possession captured his maturation. After a teammate missed a shot, he didn't immediately sprint back to the arc. He hung in the lane, read the pass, grabbed the rebound, pivoted, and got himself into a scoring position for a decisive putback. That willingness to stay engaged and read the flow instead of getting locked into autopilot is the hallmark of an interior force growing into full command. Now, the defender who changed the tone, he was everywhere, suffocating passing lanes, switching onto mismatches, and functioning as a defensive general. He may not headline highlight reels, but when he asserts himself, the entire team's energy lifts. That was clear in several late game possessions, where he made stops that kept his team within striking distance. On one pivotal sequence, he switched onto a longer opponent and refuses to be bullied. He fronts, uses his hands wisely, and when the offense tries to isolate him, he's physical enough to slow them, while quick enough to contest without fouling. In another possession, he layers reads, double teaming the ball handler, anticipating the skip pass, picking it off, and turning defense into points. That kind of instinctive reaction, the blend of physicality and anticipation, separates contenders from pretenders, and don't discount his composure at the stripe. In a tight game where the margin for error is microscopic, hitting critical foul shots with ice in his veins matters. It's the kind of reliability coaches trust when the finish finish comes down to a couple of possessions. Communication was a recurring theme. His voice was loud on the floor and in bench huddles. When rotations were needed, he pointed and directed switches, corralling teammates into proper positions. That leadership is intangible but invaluable. It's the difference between a scramble defense and an organized, stifling unit. These three, the primary facilitator, the interior force, and the defensive anchor, created a dynamic that was hard for the opponent to solve. The offense wasn't a single player show. Gravity from the playmaker pulled defenders out of position, the interior presence punished closeouts, and the defensive commander created turnovers that translated into transition points. That's a three-tiered threat that complicates scouting reports and late game strategy. But the game was far from flawless. There were sloppy moments, ill-advised turnovers, poor late shot selection, and a few questionable whistles that added drama to the closing minutes. Yet what separated the winner was the ability to respond to adversity. When the opponent tightened the lane or switched aggressively, this team adjusted on the fly. They rotated pairings, staggered minutes, and targeted matchups where their strengths could be maximized. Role players deserve a shout out. One wing drained a couple of big outside shots to keep the scoreboard ticking. A young forward made hustle plays, diving for loose balls, grabbing offensive rebounds, and hitting a clutch mid-range jumper. Those energy pieces rarely make the headlines, but in a game decided by inches, their contributions are decisive. On the coaching side, the plan was visible. Late game sets were crisp, defensive adjustments, a brief zone deployment, an aggressive trap call, forced uncomfortable shots. The bench's tone suggested preparation for a grind, and they executed under pressure. That's not flashy, it's the difference between floundering and finishing. If you're asking what this says about the team moving forward, the honest take is simple. This wasn't a fluke. A performance like this, against a competitive opponent that pushed back hard, reveals growing cohesion. Pieces fit in ways that weren't always obvious earlier in the season. Confidence is contagious. When the primary playmaker is assertive, the big man decisive, and the defensive leader locked in, everyone else plays with more conviction. Quick aside for fans who track live lines and player props. Tools that let you follow player production in real time are useful if you like monitoring who's trending and where live value sits. They offer a way to engage beyond the final box score and to see who's impacting the game on a possession by possession basis. Back to the final stretch, it was a clinic in composure. A missed three, a defensive board, a late drive, and a clutch finish. That's basketball distilled. One play in particular stood out. Under duress, the offense reset, executed a secondary action perfectly, and found a cutter for an uncontested finish. That was emblematic of the growth, calmness under pressure, and trust in the system. Looking ahead, if these three continue to operate at this level and remain healthy, you're looking at a team that can become a nightmare matchup. Offensive creativity opens lanes for role players, interior dominance controls the paint, and defensive aggression generates game-changing stops. Opponents will have to specifically game plan for that balance. Also worth noting, depth additions are flashing more often. A couple of bench pieces produce unexpected scoring bursts and critical defensive stops. Those contributions are the difference between a good unit and a deep playoff threat. Maintaining depth and rotation chemistry will be crucial down the stretch. So where does this leave us? This game was more than a W. It was a message. It showed resilience, tactical growth, and the leadership you need in tight contests. There will be bumps ahead, but take this performance as a strong signal the core is clicking. Keep an eye on how bench continuity and matchup specific adjustments evolve. Those will determine whether this is a momentary high or a sustained trajectory. If you want a deeper film focused cut on any sequence, the pick and roll sets, the fourth quarter defensive adjustment, or the isolation reads that broke their scheme, call it out and I'll break it down play by play. For now, stay critical, keep watching the details, and expect this group to make opponents adjust to them more often than the other way around.